It's that time of the year again. Summer begins its lonely departure, walking out of town like some stoic badass, destined to wander the earth alone for another 12 months, until they are once again called upon to provide us with a moment's distraction, lest heavens forfend that we be left to deal with the ceaseless noise emanating from within our own skull. And as the summer fades out, disappearing over the horizon, they take with them a pretty fun seasonal anime selection. Like seemingly every season over the past few years, this summer came replete with a heady dose of marquee sequels and some pretty splashy new titles to keep us distracted throughout the stickiest of seasons. It is now the fall's time to shine, and as they step into shot, a riot of autumnal swagger. I must admit they look pretty freaking impressive. Chainsaw Man, Blue Lock, and an absolute murderer's row of sequels have all been vying for our collective attentions this autumn. But what's been holding my attention is the latest offering from Cloverworks. You know Cloverworks, the studio that, between shitting out behemoths like Spy Family and My Dress Up Darling, have somehow found the wherewithal to casually drop a dark horse Anime of the Year contender the very same season as the aforementioned Spy Family Season 2, with the endlessly charming Bocchi the Rock. Yeah, that Cloverworks. Bocchi the Rock is of course what we will be talking about in this video. You know that. You clicked on it. So let's rock and roll.
少ないかもしれないけど、誰かに深く刺さるんじゃないかな。
The whimsical story of a loner girl gleaming purpose, or discovering themselves through the joy that they find in that shiny new activity, hobby and or community. It's hardly unique these days. Cute girls doing cute things is in essence a genre unto itself by this point. And like many genres, the fruits that it produces vary greatly in terms of quality. Well, in the case of Bocchi the Rock, what we have mined here is unquestionably an absolute gem in every sense of the word. Bocchi stands alone. And not just from its counterparts in the genre space, but across the entirety of the anime landscape of 2022. This is in no small part thanks to its wildly chaotic idiosyncrasy, and how masterfully its madcap energy is distilled, expressed, and given texture through both its biting humor and its incredible visual flair. And of course, I will get to both elements later in this video. But first I need to talk about the alpha and omega of this little ensemble, the heart and the soul of the series. Our eponymous heroine, the incredible 𝓈𝒾𝓃𝓄𝒂, or Bocchi. By the way, a quick aside, I fucking love Bocchi. For me, she is the platonic ideal of best girl. And we only want good things for her.
ついちゃった。ぼっち頑張れ、ぼっち頑張れ、ぼっち頑張れ、ぼっち頑張れ。
チケットの販売は5時からですよ。
So who, I hear you say, is this Bocchi? Bocchi is our anxiety-riddled protag, of course, and a lot of what makes the series so strong comes specifically from her and from her alone. I stress her alone because a great deal of Bocchi the Rock narratively and comedically resides entirely within the confines of her own head. I described her just seconds ago as anxiety-riddled, and for those of you who are watching along who haven't seen the series yet, I cannot overstate this. Bocchi is one anxious creature, and the series creators have done a fantastic job of emphasizing this aspect of her character in quite detailed and profound ways. As a quick example, check out how she stands here while conversing with 𝓈𝒽𝒾𝓃𝓄𝒂. Her posture, it's drawn, shoulders are hunched forward with her head and those aforementioned blades seemingly hell-bent on devouring her own neck. It's all very deliberate, and then if we contrast that posture with that of the person standing across from her, the drummer 𝓈𝒽𝒾𝓃, it's quite telling how much of themselves the characters reveal in just this face-to-face. Characterization like this is a really nice touch, and this extends just beyond Bocchi herself. The attention to detail with all of the cast, it is truly wonderful, and makes the members of Kessoku Band feel that much more tactile and realized as individuals. The series creators clearly put a great deal of their creative energy into developing and establishing their characters through the more subtle aspects of characterization, namely body language, patterns of speech, physical movements. I adore this type of layering as it so expertly helps refine the personalities of each of the band in a way that I have rarely seen matched in other productions. Let me elaborate with a further example. Check out this scene here of 𝓈𝒽𝒾𝓃𝓄e and Bocchi walking together as 𝓈𝒽𝒾𝓃𝓄e shows Bocchi the ropes around the club. First off, the animation is so fucking smooth that you wouldn't object to it offering to buy you dinner. It really is quite a thing of beauty. But what makes this scene special is what it triggers in us as the viewer. The genius here is that without even having watched a single second of the series, and having just this specific scene in isolation as a reference point, we can, on instinct alone, single out several key elements of each of the girls' respective personality just from how they move within the sequence. Details like this are littered throughout the series. How Bocchi stands apart from the others, how she struggles to make eye contact with the other members of the band, how she always walks behind her bandmates as they purposely stride out in front, and perhaps most painfully, how she inadvertently yet constantly finds herself alone and symbolically surrounded by walls of her own creation. It's both wonderful and heartbreaking, all in a single breath. These moments of separation between Bocchi and the other band members are at once quite subtle in how organic or natural they feel, and also quite bold, as the series really uses quite stark layouts with a heavy emphasis on distance to frame Bocchi's loneliness. And while oftentimes those moments are played up for comedy, like for example the band's photo shoot, they are no less effective at emphasizing that sense of isolation that results from this distance. Now, on the aforementioned visual motif of Bocchi, surrounded by walls, it is played up a lot in the opening episode, literally right from the very off in fact. As in the opening sequence, we see Bocchi as a child isolated from her classmates by a wall of her own toy blocks. It's quite a powerful image, and the washed out, muted colour palette employed in the scene really helps to add to that oppressive feeling of isolation that she experiences, even at such a young age. Then as we move further into the episode, when we find her sitting at a swing set, surrounded and alone once again, but this time by the swing's protective guardrail, it really hammers home to us just how trapped she has come to feel. The direction in this scene is also pretty wonderful. Just take a moment to appreciate this wide-angle shot of Bocchi in the playground. It is really pretty. I love how it contrasts that wide, empty space with the shadows of the early evening as they creep across the play space. It perfectly captures Bocchi's present emotional state and distills it down to a single image. It's really quite terrific direction. And speaking of terrific direction, the scene that precedes this one is where we get the arrival of our band leader 𝓈𝒽𝒾𝓃𝓄e. And what a moment it is, as she brashly and deliberately strides over the boundary of Bocchi's fortress of solitude. Like, she literally steps over the guardrail to introduce herself to Bocchi. This is also another quite powerful moment in defining 𝓈𝒽𝒾𝓃𝓄e as a character, as symbolically taking that first step is something we will see Bocchi wrestle with across the span of the series itself. But for 𝓈𝒽𝒾𝓃𝓄e, as the driving force of the group, she does so effortlessly, without a second's hesitation, and this introduction really serves to reinforce to us, the viewers, that each of these girls is very much their own entity, both within the band itself and, more importantly, beyond the band as individuals. The characters are not just here to fill out the necessary components of the rock band quota. They emanate life, a life that extends way beyond the band itself. Their walk, their voice, their eyes, their clothes, everything bristles with texture and intentionality. For example, and I know this is very random and perhaps not the best example of this, but I love how Ryu always squats when the group are just sitting around. It's a tiny detail, but it really serves to set her apart visually from the rest of the band, thereby subtly emphasizing her as the independent loner type in a way that doesn't feel heavy-handed in any sense. And it's not just 𝓈𝒽𝒾𝓃𝓄e and Bocchi. All of the members of the band complement and contrast each other so well. Let's continue to focus on Ryo though. As the introverted but independent bassist, they are a great contrast to the socially anxious Bocchi. And the series does an admirable job of reminding us that these things are not the same. 𝓈𝒾𝓃𝓄𝒃, her proactive yet thoughtful and considerate nature, it really humanizes the perspective of the outgoing extroverted personality type, while clarifying to us both their struggles and their motivations in a sympathetic manner. The group's dynamics are just fantastic, and it really gives the series heart. Now, all of this touchy-feely interpersonal stuff and the technical accoutrements that accompany them are great, but what is going to burn itself into the audience's collective consciousness and get us all to profess our undying love for this show is how the series expresses that jittery interplay between what is going on around Bocchi and how she internalizes those goings-on within her own mind. This is where the creative team truly gets to shine, in a way that continually amazes me, episode to episode. And it is actually from the comedy that so many of the more human moments bleed through and gain both their sincerity and their sense of relatability. I would like to point out the door sequence here at the beginning of episode 2 as an especially relatable but humorous example of what I'm trying to single out here for praise. Like, my God, I'm sure many of us have experienced moments like this, and it is fantastic seeing those kinds of relatable moments given artistic consideration. This is all to say that Bocchi the Rock is hilarious. The humor, it is erratic, it's effortlessly idiosyncratic, with a tendency to snowball way beyond the realms of the conventional and get downright weird. But it's always weird in the best possible way. And if you vibe with that kind of humor, you will love the series. Bocchi the Rock is so fucking funny because it boldly rides the waves between Bocchi's subjective experience and bounces it like a skull on pavement against the reality of what is actually going on around her, birthing moments that are both absurdly creative and absurdly funny. Every time Bocchi breaks, melts, or pops, it is so visually unique that the gag never gets old. And then beyond that, whenever Bocchi's imagination takes a hold over the show itself, the resulting scenes are legitimately stunning. And this is where I need to single out that spiral sequence in the opening moments of episode 6, when Bocchi is fretting about selling her ticket allocation. This scene is a legit work of art. The series creators are clearly more than willing to crank up her dysfunctionality all the way to the max. And the results are invariably spectacular, just as they are in this instance. There are several more examples like this that I could point to, splattered like soiled underwear across the series. But perhaps the best is in episode 4, when we get both the spectacular two-tone Bocchizilla scene and the cheery Bocchi sequence. Both examples are riotously creative and funny. Really, how can you not be entertained? So in closing, Bocchi the Rock, it's a cauldron of manic creativity and poignant relatability. And it's great. It's great because both aspects of the series' personality feed so well into each other. It is a fantastic comedy with poignant human characters, and it's how the show balances these poles that makes it so goddamn good. Bocchi is a mess, but she's a relatable one. She's a mess that you can't help rooting for, despite herself. So if you haven't done so already, please make sure to take the time out to check this series out. We have a potential classic on our hands here, because Bocchi does indeed rock. And there it is. That is the video. I hope you liked it. And if you did, make sure to share, hit like, smash subscribe, and leave a comment. You know, all the usual bullshit. Trust me, you interacting with this video will greatly help me as I continue to work on resuscitating this little channel. Until next time, fair viewers. Bye bye. Love you. Bye.